Well, hello guys, this is Alec here again. So I haven't really done that much to my Bentley in recent days. I had it up in the air, and took a look, and I did see a hydraulic leak from the main accumulators in the front, which I'm guessing are the brake accumulators, but I haven't gone in there and tried to figure out what was going on. I did get the car running. There's some kind of oddness going on with the ignition switch. The lock barrel itself is now acting like there's no blades inside it, so you can slide the key in and out. And as you do that, the key can fall out, and when the key falls out, the car will conk out. And it seems like it's also always stuck in second gear. So I need to look at the gearbox actuator and see if the gearbox actuator is working properly. I've been told that if there's a problem with the actuator being slightly out of adjustment, it would cause that problem. But instead of sitting there focusing my attention on this and trying to figure out what was going on, I really spent most of my time working on my 6.3, which you can see over here. That basically I got running but needs to be put back together again. There's still a lot of electrical problems that need to be taken care of, among some other knickknacks. And believe it or not, that car is very hard to work on under the engine bay. The engine wasn't designed for that body, and it was shoehorned in, and it was, it's just a pain in the rear to work on. But anyway, this purpose of this video is actually to talk about my new purchase, because owning this Bentley has given me the Rolls-Royce bug. I am really amazed at how well built this thing is and how much fun it is to drive. And I don't know whether you're familiar with this 6.3 body style, but this is called a W109 model. So the W109 is a interesting body style. It actually shares a lot of its looks with a coupe version called the W111 and W111 and W112. Those are basically two-door versions of this car. They're based on an earlier platform, a fin-tail platform, but the front end looks very similar to the front end on this car, and the rear end looks very similar to the rear end of that car, of this car as well. There's a Cabriolet version of this, and the Cabriolet version is now astronomically expensive. And you couldn't buy a decent one for like $200,000. You couldn't buy a bad one for $100 grand. And I love those cars. I mean, they're kind of my dream cars, and I was wondering, what would be something that I could buy and afford to buy that has the same kind of class and presence, but without the price tag. And owning this Bentley got me thinking about a Rolls-Royce Corniche, which is what I ended up buying last week. And here it is, guys. So this is my 1984 Rolls-Royce Corniche. I bought this car. It was kind of an impulse buy. I've been looking at the auctions and seeing what was out there, and everything that was out there was kind of too expensive. And then this thing came along. There was a couple of cheaper ones, the 70s models that had carburetors, but I didn't really want to mess with carburetors because I had I have a good friend who rebuilds SU carburetors, and but I just didn't want to mess with them. I'm really familiar with the CIS system that's in this car. It's in a bunch of Mercedes, and I'm a big fan of them. So I wanted a car that has CIS, that was a little bit more modern, and this 84 showed up. It showed up in an auction in Florida. It was a huge gamble, and I didn't come out really that well for this car. I ended up basically bidding on this car unseen. There was no pictures, there was no condition report, there was no details on the car. So all I knew is, when I searched in the morning, I have a mailing that comes out, that basically looks for these cars when they show up. It was there, and then I thought, well, I'll watch the auction, and I saw it drive across, and it looked okay from the webcam picture, which if you guys have watched the auctions, when they cast them to the internet, pictures aren't great, but it drove, and the price was low enough that I thought to myself, you know what, this is something that I can buy, and I decided to buy it. There are some great things that are apparent about this car, and there's some not so good things. As you can see, I mean, the car is what I would call a 20-footer. You can go around the car, and it looks presentable. It doesn't look bad, at least on the outside. So I can walk around it. So, it's not a bad car. It came with these horrible white wall tires. I literally just bought new tires and put them on right now. But it came with these white wall tires that I think, I was trying to look at the DOT date. I couldn't figure out whether it was a 3-digit or a 4-digit date. But if it was a 4-digit date, then it expired in 2003. If it was a 3-digit date, then it expired, sometime in the 80s. I have no idea. But the manufacturing date was 2003. But they were dry rotted, and they just looked horrible. When the car rolled up on the simulcast, you could see this white panel, and the dash actually looked pretty good right here. But it's just a piece of plastic that they put over it, and the dash is actually in horrible shape. So that was kind of a sneaky little move. It's got a few rust bubbles, at the lower parts of the wheel arch. So you can, not so much the wheel arch, but the quarter panel, you can kind of see them. Let's see if it focuses. On the other side as well. So this is about the worst that you're getting in the external, part of the car. The trunk floor has rust, which isn't good, and the soft top's kind of irritating because overall it's in pretty good shape, but then you have these problems over here, and then this bow, and I'm thinking that the bow here, it's not the actual bow that's the problem, but it's probably the piece of wood that's on the other side of the on the inside of the soft top, that basically where the bow staples to. I think that's probably the problem. The interior is in pretty gruesome shape. So here you go. The door panels are okay. They're not bad. They need a good cleaning. The wood is in horrible shape. Now this is very typical of the kind of things that you see in Florida cars, because they spend so much of the time with the roof down, that the interior gets toasted. Sometimes they drive these cars on the beach. Some parts of Florida have ordinances that allow you to drive on the beach, and when that's the case, then you get rusty floor pans. But this car looks like it spent a lot of time outside. It was actually a driver, and as a result, the wood's in horrible shape. The wood inside the dash is in horrible shape. The dash top is in horrible shape. Let me see if I can lift this thing up and you can kind of see what's underneath it. So the front seats look like they've been redone, which is nice, and they're red leather, which I actually really like. I thought the car had beige leather from the dash, when I first saw the car run through the auction. The back seat is in okay shape until you get to the seat back where the sun hits it. So you got this problem over here, and I don't know what to do about that. So I will see if it can be repaired. It may be repairable, because if you see that that piece rolls over onto the other side, and then kind of the stitching changes. So maybe I can just replace that whole piece, or maybe I can do like a furniture clinic job and get it repaired. It's missing the tonneau cover, which sucks because that's kind of expensive. It has a Nardi steering wheel, which I actually like. One of my 6.3s also has a Nardi steering wheel. And let me see if I can. Hang on. Let me just pause it for a quick second. Alright, sorry about that. Just had to lift the hood, and I didn't know exactly where the latch was. There's the engine bay. And some of the things I'm familiar with, some of the things I'm completely unfamiliar with. Looks like it's had a new alternator, which is a nice touch. That's your typical GM A6 compressor, I believe. I have a question around, so I'm guessing this is the low side port for the AC, but I can't find the high side. So I can see it going in here, and this one's going to the dryer, but I don't see a port anywhere for the high side, which is kind of necessary if you're going to need to charge your AC. So I don't see a high side port. When I bought the car, it was really low in oil. I almost had to put 2 gallons, probably about 5 or 6 quarts, into it. It was kind of interesting because I hit that button and it changes the fuel gauge to the oil level, and it was like, hey, there's something wrong here. So I topped it up. It's actually does have an AC charge in it, and the compressor does run. It does blow slightly cold, but it doesn't blow really cold, so I've got to check the pressures, and that's why I need to find out where the high side is. So if anyone, oh, there you go. There's your high side. Cheeky monkey. There you go. So that's good. Now I found the high side. Fuel distributor is very familiar to me. It's the same fuel distributor that I see on my SL, my R107 SL, my 126 Mercedes. So it's very familiar to me, that whole system. I've woken up so many Mercedes over the years that were sitting for so long with the fuel system gummed up, and I was able to drive it. My actual, if you can see it over there, my 500 SL, it's a Euro car, and it's covered in dust, which the whole building, just everything in here is covered in dust, but it's actually a nice car. But I dug this car out of a field. It had been sitting there for 10 years, and I drained the fuel tank and went through the fuel system, cleaned the injectors and everything else like that, and got it, got it started and running. So that's really why I wanted a CIS system, because I'm familiar with the system. I have the diagnostic tools. So this is a CIS pressure gauge, which is really what you need to basically figure out what's wrong with the CIS system. And I actually have a bunch of old spare parts like fuel pumps and fuel distributors. I don't know whether they're the right part numbers, but they may make fuel injectors, but they may make good testers. I actually have the lever handle Bosch fuel injector, cleaning pump thing. It basically looks like a lever arm with a little reservoir on top, and it basically, you screw on a fuel injector and spray mineral spirit through it. So there's the engine. Like I said, it's got brand new tires on it, so that's great. I haven't driven it yet with the new tires, but I'm very grateful to a gentleman on the forum. His name's Paul something. he told me about the left-handed threads on the driver's side wheels, which I would have never guessed, and I would have probably ruined the lug bolts. You know, and trying to loosen them up, thinking that, well, actually tightening up, thinking that I'm trying to loosen them up. So I'm really grateful for that. I'm also really grateful that you guys gave me the torque settings. Did use my torque wrench to tighten everything up before after I put the car down. Okay, what else? The best thing about this car. So when I got it, it basically, a bunch of things didn't work. The electrics didn't work. The turn signal lights would basically just stay on. One of the running lights, the car's running lights would just stay on. The other one would just never light up. The brake lights wouldn't light up. The interior wouldn't go on. The dash clock and assembly, in the center, wouldn't light up. It was kind of acting out. But the nice thing about it is it drove really well. It ran really well. So I live about 70 miles away from here. This is my hobby shop, but I live about 70 miles away from it. I drove it here, no problems whatsoever. It just drove perfectly. I was doing 70, 75 miles an hour, even with those ancient tires, and it drove flawlessly. And as it drove, I guess it was shaking itself loose, and all this, everything started working. The turn signal started working, the interior light started working. The AC actually, like I said, it works fine. It's just not as cold as it needs to be. So I'll probably vacuum that system. I may go back with R12 if I can flush it, because I don't know what kind of oil they're using in there right now. But it seems to be functioning pretty well. But it runs great. That's the great thing about it. So. There you go, guys. There's a slight ticking sound. Not sure whether it's a lifter or something like that. So I've got to figure out what that is. I don't know how long this car's been sitting, but it could have sat for a while, which is why it's doing that. So I just want to run it with some clean oil and then see if I can get that cleared out. I may add a quart of ATF to it, or a little bit of ATF, to see if I can free up any kind of gunk and then change the oil. But yeah, so far, it runs really well. I'm going to pause right now. I'm going to see if I can mount this camera up somewhere where it can hold, and then we can go for a drive. Alright guys, so we're going to go for a quick drive. This thing's actually got pretty good power. I'm actually quite impressed. And I'm used to driving pretty powerful cars, so you know, many of the cars that I drive daily are AMG Mercedes, and this thing's kind of, it's not as fast as an AMG Mercedes, but it's kind of fun. One thing that I have a question for you guys is, it seems like both this car and the Bentley run pretty cool. So they're, the engine temperature really just hits the bottom of the white part of the gauge. And I'm wondering if that's normal or is it something that I need to worry about? Does this car need a thermostat? So the soft top makes a bunch of whistling sounds, so I'm guessing it needs a whole set of seals. I'm not going to go very far. The car drives really well, it stops pretty well. It does pull a little bit, but I'm not sure if that's just the shape of the road. Everything's now starting to work. AC's blowing. These tyres are like a million times better than the last ones. So I bought a set of Toyos. They're 235 7015s. I got a really good deal on them. I paid $75 out the door for a tyre. So altogether I paid $300, and then it cost me another $70 to mount them and balance them, and that includes new valve stem seals and everything else like that, and disposals of the old prehistoric tires. So altogether, I'm in it for $370, which I think is probably, you know, cheap as dirt. And they're good 50,000 mile tires. So, this car has 81,684 miles on the clock, so it's been driven, but it drives great. You know, the engine's quiet. I do have some wind noise coming in from the soft top, which I'm guessing needs to be figured out. But everything seems to be working. You know, the turn signals work, the headlights work, the radio is broken, but that's fine because the radio looks horrible on this car. I actually have a Continental brand radio. It's an MP3 player and, you know, Bluetooth and everything else like that. That would look period correct for this car, so I'm going to put that in there. But, you know, all in all, I mean, it drives pretty straight. There's my hands, both of them, you know. I think it drives great. Thing reminds me of my 1973 GMC Sierra Grand pickup truck. It's got that kind of very soft, just cushiony ride, super light steering. Everything's overboosted brakes, overboosted steering.
Good turning radius. So I do feel a little bit of, you know, as I go over bumps, I can hear a little bit of knocking sound, like it's hitting. I don't know whether it's a sway bar link or something like that, but you know, but there's a knocking sound that I need to pay attention to. So, you know, when I get this thing on the lift, I'll check the suspension, make sure the ball joints are all in good shape and everything else. I can get to look underneath it. You know, I did pull the tires off, but I did that on the ground with jack stands, so I didn't really want to crawl underneath it because I'm lazy. So there you go, guys. Thank you very much, and I'd love to hear your feedback. It's just another toy of mine. As you can see, there's a bunch of toys in here, but this year I want to, you know, go through this car. I want to go through the Bentley, I want to go through the 6.3, and I want to get started on my Jensen Interceptor. And if I can get through all of those, I'd be really happy, as long as I don't buy any more cars, because I keep getting myself in trouble because I keep buying more cars, and I feel like a hamster sometimes on a wheel because I never get through a certain job because I end up changing directions. But I love this thing. You know, I think it's a wonderful car. I think I paid a little bit too much for it because of the condition of it, but I don't think it's anything that's beyond my ability to figure out, and I think I want to have fun working on it. So I'm learning about these cars. You know, they've been an unknown for such a long time, and I used to, honestly, I mean, I used to kind of think, I didn't think that much of Rolls-Royces, you know, as a marque or Bentley. I kind of thought they were overpriced, and you know, for what they were, and you know, they had a pushrod engine, and they weren't as technologically as advanced as a Mercedes or whatever. But now that I own one and I actually can feel, you know, how the door shuts and how everything's put together, the size of the suspension and everything else. I mean, the suspension in this thing is like the suspension on my Ford Super Duty pickup truck. I mean, it's way overbuilt. And you know, now that I see all of this stuff, I'm becoming very impressed by this brand. I would not be surprised if I would be very surprised if I don't buy another one of these, either a Cloud or a Shadow or something else, an Azure or a Continental. You know, the Continental R from the 90s. I'm just enamored by them. You know, the way that they drive, the way that they are put together is just, it blows my mind. So keep watching, you know, and I look forward to your feedback. Thank you very much. Take care.